Welcome students to Unit 4, Expressions, Factoring, and Equations with Rational Exponents. So turn to Working with Exponents and Radicals, which is page 2. So radical is the general term for square roots, cube roots, etc. They can be turned into exponents, and then you can use the rules below to work with them. So if you've ever seen before a 1/2 exponent, that's the same thing as a square root. So for instance, when I have the square root of a plus 1, I can rewrite that as, so here's kind of the instructions for how to do it. Everything that's inside the square root symbol, so a plus 1, will end up inside parentheses, and then this square root itself turns into a 1/2 exponent. And so those are two equivalent ways to write this expression right here. And we do that because sometimes exponents can be easier to work with. So easier to work with. So exponents are easier to work with a lot of times than radicals because they can interact with each other. So then we've got this one. So anything that is outside the square root stays outside the parentheses. And then x minus 5 goes into the parentheses. And then the square root turns into a 1/2 exponent. And then, so go ahead and try another example. And then go ahead and give this one a try and then come back and check. So that's what you should have gotten on that one. So let's pause here. We'll do cube root in a minute. And let's go down to the bottom just to kind of remember what square root is. So remember, square root does not mean divided by 2. It means what times itself gives you that number. So if I'm taking the square root of 25, what times itself will give me 25? Well, 5 times 5 gives me 25, but so does negative 5. Okay, so the square root of 25 is 5 or negative 5. For example 2, what is the square root of x squared? Well, whatever x is, because x times x equals x squared. So, not divided by 2. There. It's a really common mistake. Okay, looking at cube root. So cube root, x to the 1/3 power is the same as a cube root. Now, I don't know if you guys have seen cube roots before. So cube root means that if you have, for instance, 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8, the cube root of 8 is 2, because if you multiply 2 times itself 3 times, you get 8. So that's what cube root means. Or for another example, 3 times 3 times 3 equals 27. So the cube root, so it's a square root symbol, a radical symbol with a little 3 on it. So the cube root of 27 is 3 because 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. So that's a cube root. It's kind of like a square root, except one more time. So if I wanted to write the cube root of 3x minus 5 with an exponent in exponent form, or index, you might see this as index form too. Index form. Anyway, so you're going to take everything that was inside the radical, so 3x minus 5, and you're going to put it in parentheses, and then the cube root turns into a 1/3 exponent. But for this one, I have 3 times the cube root, so 3 times 2y plus 4, and then this gets a 1/3 exponent. Equals, and then go ahead and try the next one. And then go ahead and give this one a try, and then come back and check your work. So there's the last example. That's what it should look like. And let's go to the bottom and kind of look at a few more cube root examples. So I gave you a few right here. Notice when you take the square root of a number, you can get 2 answers potentially. With cube root, there's only one real answer. but it does not mean divide by 3. So what times itself 3 times gives me 64? If you're not sure, tap it in your calculator. So you'll take Control and then the exponent key, and that gives you a radical that you can choose what root to put. So cube root of 64, 64 is 4. Or you could also type it as 64 to the power of 1/3. Because remember, these are equivalent. You get 4. So the cube root of 64 is 4 because 4 times 4 times 4. So 4 times itself 3 times is 64. Wow. What I did there. 4 times 4 times 4, my hand getting ahead of my brain, is 64. Or in this case, the cube root of x cubed is x because x times x times x times itself 3 times is x cubed.